Namaskar and welcome to this exciting new episode of Sattology Debunking Mythology Show. And Sat means truth, and Logos means the study of science. Sattology means the study of truth, science of truth. And myth in Sanskrit means a lie, fake, imagination. And then mythology means the study of fake, a lie, or an imagination, generally an imagination. So, mythology generally, the connotation of mythology terms in the English language comes to be something which has no proof, and but still it's a tradition. So practically they're saying you're studying a fake or a lie. Sattology, on the other hand, is a term which we invented as an antonym of mythology. It means a study that all the Vedic histories have proof. Sometimes we may understand it, sometimes we may not. Incidents happened so long back, we may not get it. So today I have a very, very special guest. You all know him very, very well on this channel now. Most of you who follow him. He's very famous for last 20 years, 15 years. He's been doing it. He published his last book when I was not even thinking about it. And also he's a thinker, researcher, and a great logician also in a way, Nyaya, follower of Nyaya. Logician looks very like a magician, but he's a follower of Nyaya, Niti. And I was telling him one thing, that Mahabharata tells you Niti and Nyaya. You don't have to read any other book because the whole book is filled with that. So without delay, let's welcome Shri Nilesh Nilkant Oak. Namaskar,
Right.
Nilesh ji.
Namaskar, Aditya ji, and happy to be here in the company of many viewers and of course you.
So, the most common thing is asked, have you studied Nyaya? You have actually studied Nyaya and Niti, but the whole Mahabharata is filled with Nyaya and Niti. Like every conversation you take a Pulastya, Yudhishthir Samvad, Markandeya, Vidura Samvad, Markandeya, Yudhishthir Samvad, Narad Yudhishthir Samvad, it's all about Nyaya and Niti. And so why you have to study a separate book on Nyaya and Niti? What is the actual significance? Because since you have already gone through it.
Yes, so good question. I mean, you are right that even Ramayana or Mahabharata, you will study Nyaya very naturally, through the illustrations, through all the katha and upakhyan you get. I still understand when people say, have you studied officially Nyaya? It is to say in a textbook-like format. So for example, if we speak a language, in a way we know the grammar, but we may not know the correct grammar, and sometimes we may not know the nuances of that grammar. And actually, I'll show you one small example of it. Just recently, I was having a conversation on one of the Google forum, and so the way I write is the way I speak here. Okay, this is what you'll get into this. And you don't mince words, I don't mince words when I write. But I am never disrespectful. Having said that, that is of course what I am saying. Now the other party may not feel that way. And so when I say, for example, in this particular conversation, I said what this person is saying, what this person is claiming. Basically, he is creating a straw man or a straw man, which is again a Nyaya term, a straw man fallacy. And then he is trying to show how that is not correct. But I said, he's not falsifying my claim. He is actually taking something that's convenient to him, modifying it, and then fighting with it because he cannot falsify my particular claim. Then this academic professor jumped in. I mean, we have many academics here, and just tried to give me a lecture. And the way I work, as much as as I said, I don't mince words. The another thing I will not do is if someone is talking, writing crap, okay, the useless stuff, I will not take that person seriously. I'm not bothered to respond. And actually, I don't respond if I choose. Now, sometime, even when they are doing utter nonsense, I will respond because that is also given in the Nyaya Shastra, by the way, that sometime, even when it's not worth fighting with someone, but you may still enter the arena of a Jalpa Vitanda, even if the person is doing Vitanda or Jalpa, because the people who might be observing this discussion may not be knowledgeable enough to understand that that person is doing jalpa or vitanda. So sometimes of your own choosing, you may enter, and of your own choosing, you may go out. So to answer your question, sometimes it's a good idea to officially study it also. Having said that, the more important thing is, or that's another point, which is to say, one of these other participant, he asked me, oh, I did not know, Nileshji, that you were the expert in Nyaya. Now, I did not respond to that person because honestly, I do not consider myself expert in anything. Even after studying Mahabharata for 25 years, 30 years, or Ramayana, or astronomy, or chemical engineering, practicing chemical engineering, I honestly think I barely maybe know 1%. And I'm not being modest. I'm actually telling the facts. Having said that, just because I only might know less than 1%, that is not to say that someone who is claiming he knows it at all. And I'll show you one demonstration of it. But this other participant who also participated, and the way he looked at this particular claim, this particular individual who was critiquing my claim, he just gave him immediately a certificate saying, oh, wow, I read your article. It's a very cogent argumentation and it's a beautiful argumentation. And I told this guy, I said, okay, you are claiming it's cogent and very logical. I'm saying it's crap. So we are 180-degree opposite. Okay. And then, so what am I saying? I'm saying his judgment. That's what I'm complaining about, right? I'm saying it's a 180-degree opposite. The third person, the academic professor, jumps in and says, I am doing ad hominem, meaning a personal attack. This is the kind of very low understanding of Nyaya that people have. And so for that reason, I would say not only that I should study, which I am studying for many years, but everyone else should also study Nyaya so that they know who is talking sense and who is talking nonsense.
Yeah, especially Nyaya Darshana, it particularly states very easily, and I'm again quoting from Mahabharata, not from the Nyaya Darshana book. Nyaya Darshana automatically says that you have to consider all facts as
Mhm.
false. And in this is a conversation between Bhim and Yudhishthir. There's a shloka
Mhm.
on that, where Bhim
Mhm.
is telling Yudhishthir to fight, to attack. And he
Mhm.
says, according to Nyaya, everything is false. So we have to objectively analyze Duryodhana's position. And since we are stronger, we can fight. And
Mhm.
Yudhishthir says the Nyaya, again he quotes Nyaya Darshana. He says, after Rasya Yagya, so many kings were unhappy with us. Now they have
Mhm.
joined them. And now
Mhm.
their strength is much more. Attacking
Mhm.
at this time is not urgent because we already handed over the kingdom. So now all of
Mhm.
them will work against us. It's better to go 13 years in exile and prepare.
Mhm.
So here, both of them are using Nyaya, but the
Correct.
counter argument is there because both of them know the topics very well.
Yes. And that is what you find through the entire corpus of ancient Indian narratives. When the two people are discussing, whether it is a Krishna and Arjun, or just like you said, Yudhishthir and Bhima, it is not to just find faults with the other side, but to reach a meaningful or an appropriate conclusion. Okay. And if we don't, then we can go our own ways, but
Right.
then don't pretentiously claim that we are truly after the truth.
Now
Okay.
I'll give
Because that's why the Nyaya is a framework. Yeah.
since I just launched my book yesterday, One Arrow, One Kill. Now in that episode, I mentioned that even though Sri Ram was himself capable of taking over Ravan,
Hmm.
but nonetheless, he prepared an army greater than him, greater than Ravan, and again use the principle of Nyaya Darshana. Because
Hmm.
unless you are equal to the enemy, then only you can excel.
Hmm.
If you're not equal, you cannot excel.
Correct.
So you have to make the level playing field in any way. So
Right.
anyway, Nilesh ji, let's start with today's one, which is I think something extraordinary you're going to share today again.
Yes. And just for the sake of continuity and that people can relate to it, we may call this uh, Mysteries of Ancient Indian Astronomy Part 2.
Yeah.
In Part 1, we looked at the pi values, we looked at the origin of the nautical mile unit, why the Earth's circumference, either average number or number assumed at the equator, is considered equal to 21,600 nautical mile. Where does that come from? It has an astronomy origin that was accurately measured for the first time by Indians. In a reverse fashion, that also tells you how Indians knew not only the pi value, but they were most practical, most pragmatic about its usage. They were not um, obsessed with an artificial sense of the precise value of the pi. Whatever the precision that was required, they looked at it. Today, we will look at some another phenomenon, again very important. For example, this is what happens if you look at the Western Indology's introduction to Indian astronomy, like say Surya Siddhanta, for example. They were so fascinated, they grabbed the book, they translated. In fact, the committee that translated was transatlantic. There were people on the American side, there were people on the European side. They tried to translate it. They had their own assumptions, biases, which is to say, nothing can go before Greek, especially in terms of technology. So therefore, in a very artificial fashion, they tried to think that the Indian astronomy is like 500 CE, like so 1500-year old. And that made all the difference, or that created all the havoc, because everything they were trying to interpret using the glasses, using these particular colored glasses, thinking everything is only 1500-year old when they got it. So corresponding to say 500 CE. And that was a problem because the ancient Indian astronomy is very old. I mean, we have looked at it, and today we will look at one of the many very mysterious, unique phenomenon, objectively testable, empirical, from Indian astronomy that are mind-boggling. Okay, and people should fall from their chairs. Even when I use this term, many academics don't understand it, and they think, "Oh, yeah, that's like you are abusing me." I said, "There is nothing to abuse. I'm saying just hang on to your chairs, because if you are stuck in a 1500-year-old Surya Siddhanta, you will fall off your chairs when you see these empirical evidence." For example, like recently, I was having a conversation on one of the Google group, and that I just mentioned to you partly. So just look at this. We don't have to go into the names. Just read this. We need to get past ad hominems. One professor wrote to me, non sequiturs, red herrings. I mean, ignore the spelling mistakes there, and grandiose assertions if you are interested in pursuing the truth. And therefore, if anyone points out weaknesses in your methodology, that is one's methodology or my methodology, or in your collection and analysis of the data, he should be welcomed as adding to the good pursuit of the truth, or whatever comes closest to it, or he should be refuted carefully, thoroughly, and not dismissed with abuse. I would agree with this 110%. There is nothing, I mean, the person is right on the money. The problem is this individual, okay, because he happens to support this biased claim of another PhD guy from Canada. This guy is, he's projecting what exactly he's doing or his disciple is doing. He's projecting that ad hominems, non sequiturs, red herrings, and grandiose assertions on me. Now, that is the problem. Otherwise, this statement is absolutely correct. There should be no ad hominems. There should be no non sequiturs. In fact, that's what I was objecting to, saying I was not objecting to ad hominems. I'm saying that's fine. I mean, I have a thick skin, I just ignore it and try to get to the substance. Non sequiturs was my objection. Red herring was my objection. And the grandiose assertion on this guy's part was that he was therefore, whatever the rambling he wrote, he was thinking he has therefore falsified my claim, which is not the case. And so I really don't have a problem with he writing whatever he wants to write. If it's not worth my time, I will not pay attention to it. I asked this individual, by the way, Aditya to come on your show, not just necessarily debating with me, just on his own, just with you, and he declined. Then I also said, if you want to do a debate on Sattology or on many other platforms, he can do that. For now, at least he has declined. And, if he continues to do this nonsense, then I would not be even interested in debating with him. So we will see what happens. Then this professor writes, he said, be invested in the process, sir, referring to me, not the outcome, as you who keeps asserting about your scientific rigor, scientific temper, and scientific methodology should very well know. He's correct there that, that he is attributing to me because I claim it, I assert it, and that's very true. Scientific acumen, I always talk about scientific acumen, logical reasoning. And frankly, I will tell you, Aditya, I'm waiting for someone to actually come and say, hey, you talk about this scientific acumen, logical reasoning all the time. What is it? And I'm just waiting for it because I would love to explain them using some of their own names, then own examples, what scientific acumen is, what logical reasoning is, and if they would have employed it, how it would have led them to something else and not what they are claiming. They know it very well. That's why nobody comes and asks me, what do you mean by scientific acumen? Or what do you mean by logical reasoning? Be it as it may, I will tell you a quote from one of my friend, very young, by the way. I mean, he's a like undergrad university student, very brilliant mind. Okay, so he wrote it now in a totally different context. I just loved it, and it's very relevant, so I'm pulling that. His name is Satish Verma. He said, just he's quoting himself, right? So what people say, when the people say this, they say, I need a logical explanation of this event, concept, rule, etc. Or our professor at the top, they're saying, hey, please get past ad hominems, non sequiturs, red herrings, grandiose assertions. Really, the person, in this case, this professor, is thinking what I'm doing is ad hominems or non sequiturs, is because of the problem that Satish Verma very well explains. Now, what people say when they say I need a logical explanation, really what they mean, read it beautifully, and everyone who is watching should do that. He says, so basically the person is saying, in a way, not saying it officially, but that's what he or she really means, based on the rudimentary amount of facts which I know, coupled with my mediocre ability to process any complex information, and bolstered by my total ignorance of logical methods, can you provide an explanation which can pass the test of my prejudice yet satisfy my curiosity? And this is a tough deal to meet, but this is a chronic problem, okay, not limited to academia, okay, not limited to like people in science. It's everywhere. Okay, now it gets worse if you don't have any background whatsoever of a science, but this is the real problem. And Satish Sharma put it beautifully, so I thought I'll just mention it quickly. Now, getting into our mystery. Again, number of you are familiar with my work here, so I don't need to explain this every time. But essentially, just using super rich evidence from multiple dozen plus different fields, I have established a chronology time frame for Indian civilization going back to more than 24,000 years. Now, this is based on what? Initially, at least, astronomy, and hydrology. And then, of course, evidence from multiple different fields. And then people wonder, well, but is there like a civilizational evidence from India itself, from other spheres of life? Is there a civilizational evidence from around the world? The answer to each of that question is yes, yes, and yes. Only if you are willing to put the effort to explore what is available. And many people want this spoon fed, but spoon feeding is not always possible. So what we do is through some particular specific phenomenon, we try to give individuals, everyone, a taste of it, with the hope that they get excited about this and they explore this whole entire area on their own. Quickly, my books. These are the books in India through Subbu Publications, and if you are outside India through Amazon, you can have these books. Today, the specific phenomenon we are going to look at, again, it's from astronomy. You can call it Indian astronomy. You can call it ancient Indian astronomy. Now, remember, astronomy is a universal. Okay, I mean, if it's in the sky, more than likely everyone is going to notice it. But is this documented by anyone? As far as based on the evidence that we have available around the world, there is no other civilization. That's not to put them down in any fashion. The documents get lost. Every civilization is not equally advanced in every field, such as, say, astronomy, medicine, agriculture, navigation, commerce, philosophy, all of that. They can be a variation. The reasons could be different, but the point I want to make it is that this particular astronomy phenomenon is to be only found in the ancient Indian astronomy text. Okay, now why is this important? Let's look at this. So first, understand what is the Rohini Shakata Bhed phenomenon. What you're seeing in this picture, those of you who understand the zodiacs like Aries and Taurus and Gemini and so on, in the sky, this is the area of a torus. Okay, So this yellow greenish line that you see here is the ecliptic, that is the path of the sun around the earth as seen from the earth. And these blue lines are of course not there in the sky. These are for our reference point here. This star is the star Aldebaran. Okay, that's a Arabic name. Okay, may mean different things, but in Indian astronomy, it is called Rohini, like a red giant. Okay, in that sense, it's a red star, Rohini. Um, that's like our arteries. Arteries are also called Rohini. And then Nila, which is the blue. Other ones, the veins are called Nila because they are blue, whereas arteries are called Rohini because they are red. Okay, and this particular area, this is also considered the eye of the bull, of that Taurus, of the Toro. And so there are many stars, of course, here, but the 5 stars here. So starting with this star called Garga in Indian astronomy, this star Rohini. And so if you go here, next star number 2, star number 3, star number 4, star number 5, it creates that V shape. And it's called Shakata, like an old time cart. A small cart in India is called Khatara, goes by different names. And it may be pulled by, say, one horse or one bull or one donkey and so on. So imagine like it's been pulled into the right direction. And this is the a small vehicle, Khatara, where stuff can be placed. One can sit there and travel. So this is, in astronomy sense, this is called the Shakata of Rohini. Now what happens is most of our planets are along this ecliptic. Okay, they are not exactly at the ecliptic. They are on, depending on their orbit at any given time, they could be on the either side of ecliptic. What happens is Mercury, Venus, and Jupiter, their orbit is much, much closer to the ecliptic. It doesn't deviate much from the ecliptic. And therefore, what happens is any of these 3 planets, for example, will never come anywhere inside this V shape. This is the called Shakata of Rohini. They will never come. On the other hand, if you look at the moon, it will come all the time. No big deal. Moon deviates from the ecliptic plus minus 4 or 5 degrees. And so easily it will come here. So then the comets, they are not following any track of the ecliptic. So they in principle can come. But there are 2 other visible planets left. Okay, so we already talked about Mercury, Venus, Sun, of course, is going to follow the ecliptic. Jupiter, we talked about. And then the moon definitely will go through it. The comet is not really a planet, so that's gone. There are 2 other visible planets that are left. What are them? Mars and Saturn. And not that often, but very rarely, at least Indian astronomy text says that there are such situations when a Mars or a Saturn would actually come inside this Shakata, inside this cart of Rohini. If that happens, it is called Rohini Shakata Bhed. Like think of Aditya, your book of yesterday, one arrow, one kill. So imagine like, the Mars or the Saturn is coming like an arrow and hitting this Shakata. Okay, Bheda. Cheda, Bheda. It is hitting it. So if it hits either Garga, Tara, Rohini, or anywhere in between, if it comes inside, then it is called the Rohini Shakata Bhed. For example, it is given in the Surya Siddhanta. Again, Vrushe Saptadashe Bhage exactly is telling you which place. Vrushe, that Vrushabha referring to Taurus, by the way. Okay. And if it comes and the thing comes inside, it is called Rohini Shakata. It's a Bindyat Bheda, Rohinya Shakatam Tusaha. Then it will be considered a Shakata Bhed. If we go to Varahamir's Bruhat Samhita, we get additional explanation. Again, see, when Surya Siddhanta is saying it briefly, that is because Surya Siddhanta assumes everybody knows, because it's a text, not as an elementary textbook. It is a text meant for the people who are already experts. Okay, so it's giving in a very brief language. Bruhat Samhita, Varahamir is explaining a little bit more. He's saying Rohini Shakatam Arkanandano, which is who is who? The son of Ravi, son of sun, like a Surya, is of course again Saturn. Yadi Bhinnati Rudiro Athava Shikhi. Rudiro is the red, again the Mars, and Shikhi can be referred to comet. And he says, if Saturn or Mars, and we will ignore the comet for now, if Saturn or Mars comes inside this V shape of the Rohini, it is considered very bad. Okay, it's considered like a bad omen, so to say. In that say, it is very bad for the Earth situation. Okay, how did they decide this? Was there any causal relationship? I think not. If there is, I don't know. I don't think it's a causal relationship. In fact, it's a extremely detailed empirical observations over a long time. So anytime something happened, either a bad event, they looked at the sky to see what was also happening in the sky, or it could be the other way. Like once they knew that if certain thing happens, it's usually bad, like eclipses and whatnot. When something like this happened, which is to say Saturn or Mars doing Rohini Shakat Bhed, they must be watching for some signs bad is happening, like earthquake or pandemic, like what we're having right now, and so on. By the way, there is no Rohini Shakat Bhed right now, just to let you know. So he's saying that's considered bad. And so just to give you a timeline, the Surya Siddhanta, I have shown that although Western Europeans or Western astronomers thought it was not astronomers, they were actually religious people, who thought it was only 1500 years old, because they were assuming whole thing began in 4000 BC. Now we know very well that Surya Siddhanta, the updates to Surya Siddhanta itself goes to 17,000 years. And there are some other updates which takes us to 30,000 years, 38,000 years. So definitely parts of Surya Siddhanta are much older than 40,000 BC. That's not a surprise to us anymore. But the additions have occurred to Surya Siddhanta. The updates have occurred. Now the Brihat Samhita Varahamir is from what? We don't know the exact timing of Varahamir, but definitely more than 2000 years ago. That's Varahamir. And this is Graha Laghava, the last one, from Ganesh Daivadnya. Okay, and this is from 16th century. Okay, Ganesh Daivadnya. He's saying Bhaumarkyo, Bhaumya and Arkyo, meaning the son of a Bhumi, which is again Mars, Bhumi Putro, and Arka, son of a Arka, Ravi Putra, which is again Saturn. So Mars and Saturn, what he's saying is yes, they are capable of doing the Shakata Bhed, but Yugantaresyat is saying in our times, they will not do it. Our times, they cannot do it. They have not done it. They will not do it. And then he says, but since Varahamir is referring to it 2000 plus years ago, or Surya Siddhanta is referring to it for thousands of years ago. I mean, Surya Siddhanta updates goes to 3000 BC, 5500 BC, 7500 BC, 12,000 BC, 14,500 BC. He's saying because Surya Siddhanta is very old and it is referring to it, maybe this Shakata Bhed by Mars and Saturn might have happened in the deep antiquity. That's all he's saying. Okay. Now let's look at some of the earlier work related to this RSP. A great astronomer, one of the greatest or one of the greatest of not just India, but of the whole world. And sad story is many people don't even know his name, Shankar Balakrishna Dikshit. About 140 years ago, he did, just imagine, Adityaji, the calculations he would have done using hands, okay, hand calculations. I mean, there is no astronomy software then. He did calculations based on Saturn's position, Mars positions, their orbits, and the change in their orbital, change in their nodes, and all kinds of parameters. And then he also came to the conclusion that, yes, right now they won't do it. We don't know if we can show anything in the last few thousand years, but definitely in the past, they would have done it. That's a possibility. He did not propose any specific date, but he did calculate the lower boundary. And he said, based on his back of the envelope calculation, it appears to him that if they ever did it, it would be before 5000 BC. Okay, before 5000 BC. That was an approximate back of the envelope calculation. Specific year he mentioned is 5294 BC or before. Very recently, and when I say recently, I would say last 20 years, few scientists from Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, Mumbai, so Professor Wahiya, and then few others, what they did, good, I'm glad that they did it. They collaborated with Jet Propulsion Lab and their astronomy data coming from Hubble telescopes and whatnot. And they tried to look for instances if the Mars and Saturn could be seen doing it. In fact, maybe they just focused on a Mars, because somewhere I think internally they believed, wrongfully so, and I'm going to show you that that is the case, that Mars would do it, Saturn will not do it. That's what they thought. And they explored this for the last 10,000, 12,000 years time period, and came up with 4 instances where they claimed that Mars had done this Rohini Shakata Bheda. They also claimed that the Saturn will never do it. Okay, Saturn did not in the past, and it will not do it. Another Indian astronomer, a very decent astronomer. And when I started my study, Adityaji, I benefited a lot from his writings. Since then, we have deviated from each other because the Arundhati Vasishtha, we have to discuss that sometime, maybe a few series of episodes. I was so shocked and surprised that he couldn't understand the simple observation of Arundhati and Vasishtha. Be it as it may, I benefited a lot during my initial years. I'm talking, late 90s. Certain aspects of astronomy. He has published a lot of papers and some good work. So he did critique the work of Wahiya. Now that, I mean, I'm admirer of Chandrahari, so is Wahiya, but I'm saying that particular criticism of Wahiya by K. Chandrahari is not correct. Actually, Wahiya has shown with the data that these things happen, and I have validated this. One more name I should mention, in fact, I'm using his slides, is my good friend and my co-researcher, you can say, Ameya Modak. So this is actually Ameya Modak's slide from his recent presentation at the conference. So that's his criticism is not correct. That he was saying Wahiya is wrong. You don't have to go that far back. And in fact, K. Chandrahari came up with a modified definition for Rohini Shakata Bhed. Why? Again, see, our prejudices can stop us prematurely in a certain time frame. Because his prejudice is what? K. Chandrahari, everything is like after 3000 BC or so. So he was never thinking of going beyond that. And I had a correspondence with him. I said, well, hold on, have you considered before? And he said, well, yeah, one may consider it, but why would I even go before 3000 BC? I said, well, be my guest. I have a reason to go before 3000 BC. If you don't, that's fine. So he modified the definition. I'll not go into that, but according to that definition, there is no Rohini Shakata Bhed. So he just said, if a Mars or Saturn comes somewhere in the vicinity of 2 degrees of the Gargatara, then it can be considered a Rohini Shakata Bhed. That cannot be the definition of Rohini Shakata Bhed. And then, of course, he said, Mars will not do it. So Wahiya is saying Saturn will not do it. Chandrahari is saying Mars will not do it. Okay. And rest of the world is not even aware of what these Indians are talking. Okay. So let's see what actually the data shows. We will first look at the Rohini Shakata Bhed by Mars. The left side, what you see is the Wahiya team from Tata Institute of Fundamental Research proposing 4 years where they claim that actually Rohini Shakata Bhed took place. When I looked at them, and I must not have looked at all 4, I don't remember, that I found that yes, the Rohini Shakata Bhed by Mars does happen for these years, but not exactly what they have claimed. Actually, what we could find with astronomy softwares, and not just one astronomy software, multiple softwares, is that there is a shift, a consistent shift of 2 years. And that is what Ameya Modak actually went and verified. So Wahiya is claiming 9860 BCE, Mars doing Rohini Shakata Bhed. In reality, at least using a software, I should say, astronomy software, there is like a tabular data. Astronomy software shows it, yes, Mars did RSB, Rohini Shakata Bhed, but in 1962. Wahiya says 9371 BC. Ameya has shown, or astronomy software shows 9373. Wahiya says 5284. Astronomy software shows 5286. So you see a very consistent difference of 2 years. I don't know, Ameya doesn't know, we don't know why that difference shows up. But very consistent otherwise. In the close vicinity, that does happen. The fourth one that Wahiya team claims that the Rohini Shakata Bhed took place, I did not check it. So the credit goes to Ameya Modak. He actually checked it and found that there is no correlative instance. Using astronomy software, at least, we cannot show Rohini Shakata Bhed by Mars in 9339 BC. And I'm going to show you the pictures of that now. So this is that last year where Vaya team claims a Rohini Shakata Bhed, but Ameya has shown that actually does not take place. So look at this. So this is the V shape here, Garga and all the way to Rohini. Okay. And the Mars is, it gets very close, but not inside the V shape. Okay. It's outside. On the other hand, when it gets inside the V shape, now I hope you can relate to this, that V shape here. Garga is here and Rohini would be somewhere here. The Mars in this year 5286 BCE is inside that Shakat. Now, guys, so that you can relate to this, this is an extremely rare phenomenon. Extremely rare phenomenon. How rare is this? After I just do this, I'll show you the summary. It has never happened. It has not happened in last 6,000 plus years. It has not happened, guys. Okay. In the last 6,000 years, it has never happened. And if you go like last, say 15,000 years, it has happened like 10 times for the Mars. Last 15,000 years, it has happened 10 times. And how frequently Mars comes to Rohini? Every 2 years. Okay. So in 13,000 years, it has come there 26,000, what is that? Half of that, sorry. It has come there like a 7,000 times. Out of 7,000 times, is doing only 10 times. Okay, again, another instance, that 4 instances we looked at. Mars is inside that V. Now you can see very beautifully here. So this is my V shape and Mars is inside. And again, you can see the same thing, 4th instance. Again, this is a V, Shakat of Rohini, and Mars is inside this. In addition to what Vaya showed, so Vaya team thought there are only 4 instances. In fact, I identified many, and Ameya Modak went even beyond. For example, I had identified this 5570 and then a couple others here in this area. Okay, but Ameya did a phenomenal job, very exhaustive. In fact, he found something new, like a new lower limit. Dixit ji said, SB Dixit said what, 5,000? Actually, Ameya could show that there was indeed one Rohini Shakata Bhed as late as 4,355 BCE. And so Ameya found these additional ones going back to like 13,000 years. These are all done by Mars. I'm going to quickly run you through this. So just notice the V shape and notice that the Mars is right on the line or inside. Okay, so it's here. Same thing here, maybe a bit hard to see. This is Mars here. Here again, this Mars is here. Again, Mars is inside the V shape. Again, Mars is inside the V right on the line. Here, Mars again inside the V, and here Mars right on the line. So these are like 7 instances where Mars did Rohini Shakata Bhed. Now, when it comes to Rohini Shakata Bhed by Saturn, Shankar Balakrishna Dixit said if it has done it, and Shankar Balakrishna Dixit did this on a Shraddha, because he has studied Surya Siddhanta like nobody else. And he had this confidence that if Surya Siddhanta is saying it, even if he cannot empirically, objectively show that to be true, it must be true, because he had come to trust Surya Siddhanta. Like many of the scientists of the 19th and 18th century, and even 19th century, came to trust Newton. Eventually, Newton was shown to be wrong. Okay, I mean, not wrong. His formula can be still used as a good approximation. But Einstein eventually did show that the Newton's theory has many problems, and actually it's wrong. But that took some time. It took some 300 years, 200 plus years, right? But in the meantime, people had developed this full confidence, rightfully so, justified in Newton's theory, something similar. Why they trusted Newton? Because his theory was so successful in predicting the positions of the planets and so on. That is the experience of Shankar Balakrishna Dikshit. That's why he trusted. And so therefore he said, Saturn, I don't know when, but if it has happened, and since Surya Siddhanta is saying it must have happened before 5000 BC, and he left it at that. Okay, he had no way to calculate this. Then, Chandra Hari modified the definition. That is like what you call a straw man. Not a fallacy, but he essentially changed the definition of a Rohini Shakata Bhed. What does the Rohini Shakata Bhed means? That the star or the planet, sorry, Mars or Saturn has to come inside this V. He changed the definition. He said, because in his time, or whatever the calculation time period he was looking for, which is 3000 and after, he could sense that it will not happen. So he said, hey, that's not what Rohini Shakata Bhed is. If even Mars or Saturn come close to that star Garga within 2 degrees, it can be considered Rohini Shakata Bhed. So remember, he completely modified the definition. Funny enough, therefore, he said as if Saturn does it, but he did not accept Mars can do it. Now we showed 10 instances of Mars doing it. Now look at the Saturn. Now remember the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research team. They claimed that Saturn will never do it. Well, guess what? They are wrong. Actually, there are 2 instances of Saturn. I had found them, and again, Ameya verified those, and Ameya might have looked at some more data. I'm not aware. I'll have to check with him. But definitely, we have 2 instances. Something very interesting. I'm not claiming causality. I want to make it very clear, but just a speculation for everyone to think about. Like, why that, if you remember that verse by Varahamir or even Surya Siddhanta verse that says, as if these were considered as bad omens. And I said, it may be that there's something bad, a very serious thing was happening, and that time they happened to notice Saturn or Mars doing Rohini Shakata Bhed. This is one possibility. Or this is a rare phenomenon. So when that did happen, they looked at what interesting else is happening on the ground, and they might have artificially correlated. Any of this is a possibility. All that I want to just bring it to your attention is that when you see these 2 events happening, at least the Saturn doing Rohini Shakata Bhed, the 8000 BC time frame, which is 10,000 years ago, keep in mind that it just coincidence, this may be coincidence, it happens to be the younger, driest time period, which is what, about 11,000 BCE to 9,600, 700 BCE. Okay, so just after that, and I don't know if they kind of correlated in some fashion. I'm speculating, as I said, be it as it may. So actually, Saturn does do the Rohini Shakata Bhed, and I'm going to show you these 2 instances. So again, this is the V shape. This is the Shakata of a Rohini. And here is the Saturn. Okay. Just in the picture, it looks like it's on the blue line, but actually it is inside the blue line. And even if it's on a blue line, that is also Shakata Bhed, because it pierced, it hit, it touched the Shakat. And the Shakat begins with a Garga star and Rohini star. So that happened once in 8105 BC. And you see another instance here, you can see Saturn clearly inside the blue compared to here. Again, this one in 8046 BCE. All right, so what is our summary? The Western Indologists, they are, I don't know where they are today, but definitely they were stuck in the claim of 500 CE, only 1500 years ago for astronomy. They thought it is only that old. Okay, in fact, there was only one reading. It is indeed from 500 CE, which is the longitude measurements of nakshatra, very crudely done. So somebody did some update to Surya Siddhanta in around 500 CE. That is correct, but that is only one of the update. Okay, so if we go to somebody's house and we see a light bulb, that is been replaced, and we see the manufacturing date of the light bulb, and it says 2020. And if just based on that, if we say the whole house was built in 2020, that would be or that could be a blunder. That is the kind of blunder this was. Now, interestingly, most pro-Indic researchers are also clueless. It's very important to understand. Although there are great astronomers both in the East and the West, right? So Bailly, for example, or John Playfair in Scotland, Bailly in France, and Cassini in France. They did understand the precision, accuracy, the magnificence of the Indian astronomy. Most of the Western Indologists totally misunderstood this. But the Indian side, even the pro-Indic researchers are also clueless. And I'm not talking the pro-Indic researchers of the past. I'm talking the pro-Indic researchers of the present, even our times. A few waver and wobble with non-committal claims for Indian astronomy from 500 CE through 4000 BCE. But here, what I presented to you guys. So if you understand the context, what the masses are thinking, what the so-called scholarly consensus, what a dumb term, but it is used. So-called scholarly consensus will go where? 500 CE, 500 BCE, maybe max 3000 BCE, maybe 4000 BCE. Against that so-called agreement, fake agreement it is, because they don't study. Against that agreement, look at what I just showed you today. And this is just one of the many. We have discussed many in the past, and we will discuss many more in the future. If you just look at the Rohini Shakata Bhed, what is it showing you? On other references, I have shown the Surya Siddhanta and Mrs. Rupa Bhati, her research. I don't know if she discussed Aditya with you the latitude of Augusta star, because that takes us to 38,000 BCE. Aryabhatiya also is a very old text. Right now, everyone thinks it is 1500-year-olds. Okay, just like their Surya Siddhanta, they thought 100 years ago. Everyone thinks Aryabhatiya is 1500 years old. We are doing the work right now. I mean, we have made a significant progress. When actually we bring it out, it will be very exciting, eye-opening as to how old at least the certain portions of Aryabhatiya are. Certain portions, okay, just like Surya Siddhanta. So what do we know about the RSB phenomenon? This is something not documented by any other world civilization. So we are just lucky that it somehow got preserved into ancient Indian astronomy, in spite of all that was burned at Nalanda and Takshashila during the foreign invasions, the Islamic invasions and whatnot. Okay. Now, British or Europeans did not, I mean, they might have burned things in other places like South America or Egypt. They did not burn as much in India, but actually they could see the value of it. So they actually grabbed those and took it with them. And that's how, you know, the Western modern astronomy came into being. Fascinating. That is a tale that needs to be told. We will do it someday. But anyways, so RSB phenomenon, not documented by any other world civilization, documents a time interval of 5th millennium BCE. Remember that 4284 event identified by Ameya Modoc through 13th millennium BCE. Okay, that 12,000 something that was also identified by Ameya Modoc for RSB by Mars. And why are we not talking beyond 13th millennium BC? Because myself or Ameya Modoc has not explored it. We don't know what possibly we may find there. But even just what we have done, based on that, we know that the documentation that you see in Indian astronomy refers to certain events that took place from 5th millennium BC through 13th millennium BC. And some of the individuals involved in doing that is Shankar Balakrishna Dikshit, Professor Wahiya and his team at Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, K. Chandra Hari. Now, he may not have agreed to this, but his work is worth reading because that provided many insights. That certainly provided many insights to me, while I'm not agreeing with his conclusions or his inferences from Nishakata Bhed itself. A very decent astronomer by the otherwise, and I benefited from his work. And Ameya Modoc, he really took it, you know, as they say, hold the bull by the horns, because this is, guys, not an easy work. I mean, Ameya and I are talking at least for 8 years, 8+ years of work. What I presented to you today took 8+ years to do it. And then, of course, myself. Okay, so we can stop here. I'll stop. So that was my monologue, Aditya ji.
Yeah, it was long. Yeah, it was good.
it was it was a
it,
long monologue.
it was a good content actually. Or see, one thing struck out to me. There is so little we know. Like the Rohini Shakata Bhed, this was, and I'll be honest, I heard it for the first time.
Thank
And
you. Thank you for being honest. Many other folks can be pretentious and they say, I knew about it.
I heard. See, the thing is, there are so many details, and there are so many scientific parameters which which help us resolve the astronomical miscalculations. And this is
Mhm.
a phenomenal evidence, actually, phenomenal.
It is, yeah, yeah,
And I did not know that independently they went back to 5294 BC. And so it's an incredible evidence, actually. And if it
yeah.
is occurring, then it changes everything, everybody else's perspective also. and
Correct.
and it's a roadblock for many calculations also.
It's a roadblock for many calculations. And also think of it. So when they are discussing this Rohini Shakata Bheda as a established phenomenon, that is, even the last time it happened was like more than 6,000 years ago.
Correct.
Imagine how far back we have to go, where Rohini is established, the nakshatra system is established, and not only that, but that phenomenon is established, which is to say they have seen all other planets not do the other planets doing it, or rather not doing it. Then some planets who do it most often, like Moon will do it all the time. Okay, I mean, you don't have to even call a phenomenon. It's like saying sun showing up in the sky. Well, it happens almost every day if there are no clouds.
Right.
So Moon does all the time. Mercury, Venus, and Jupiter never do it. And then they feeling curious. So these three guys don't do it. Moon does it all the time. Does Mars and Saturn do it? So think of the other synthesis that is going on in their brain. Then somebody putting this into as a framework, like as a what you call academic, like as a make it routine. So people are dying, right? Because these things are happening only after 1,000 years.
Hmm.
But the knowledge is being transferred. That hey, look for this kind of Rohini Shakat Bhed in your time,
Right.
or preserve a previous event of it, and how they would have done it. It is very fascinating.
It's phenomenal, and I think that is the beauty of the Vedic culture and the Vedic scriptures, and I'll also say the Vedic documentation. No other documentation can even match it. I mean, they did not go to that level of
Hmm.
pinpointing an exact occurrence on the earth. Just imagine earth's occurrence connected to nakshatra. Nothing can be more scientific than that, because those are repeatable but at a particular
Hmm.
interval. So if you
Yeah,
miss one interval, then you wait for the next interval. you know
correct.
you can't go in the middle, and you cannot just. So few evidences on the earth is just like someone doing carbon dating. The carbon dating
Hmm.
is not conclusive, even
Yeah,
rejected by the ASI
yeah.
also says they can go maximum 4,000 years back.
No, they can go longer, Aditya ji. See, carbon dating, you can go up to 50,000. And there is then additional techniques like thermoluminescence that can take you further. And then I'm trying to think, like a nuclear based, like a half-life time period for different elements. See, so I don't, at least me, I do not object to the carbon dating. Actually, carbon dating is also a wonderful tool in our
If
toolkit,
you find the right object.
right. Or just like the problem with not so much carbon dating, but many of the mainstream archaeologists, is the problem of a nyaya, the logic, absence of evidence. They confuse with evidence of absence. Okay, absence of evidence they confuse with evidence of absence. And then one more thing that they do, which Nassim Nicholas Taleb explains it beautifully. He says, but there is a worse kind of disease, he says, then this absence of evidence is not equal to evidence of absence. I mean, they don't not understanding that that is the case. But there is a worse disease, he says, that many researchers think that just because we have not found until now, we will never find it in future.
Hmm.
So
the
that is a problem.
another I think fallacy is the finding of chariots, which is
Hmm.
chariots and tools and other things, because pottery can be many times. I mean, The Mahabharata talks about gold vessels, gold coins, name of the gold coins, and we always search out a chariot and we think this is the last evidence we found, or a
Yeah,
pottery. And then that can be the pottery which you also mentioned last conversation we had. Pottery can be, many people are using pottery. There's so many people out there. So
yeah,
you cannot say that this is the pottery which is used by the Pandava,
correct.
or
And even I'll tell you the pottery, baked pottery and unbaked pottery, like where I grew up, I have seen in my times, which is not that long ago, okay, unbaked pottery and baked pottery both being used.
true.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah. So no, I think that's also a point, because unbaked pottery and the baked pottery will have uh, two different objectives, two different results. Also, if you do
Yeah,
carbonating on that, another thing is
correct.
metal utensils were very common during Mahabharat war. Very common. Iron
Yeah,
utensils or other metals, gold and silver you obviously cannot use, but iron and mixed with copper, these are very common. And so I have not seen any such evidence so far,
correct.
so the
Which
best
which
rely
means what? Aditya ji, which means you said we look for a chariot, meaning archaeologists look for a chariot. Honestly, they don't look for a chariot either. When they find a potential place, they dig it,
Yeah,
okay, and they just show up whatever they can find, which is correct. The problem is, I don't know if it is limited to archaeologists, but many of the people who lack scientific acumen and logical reasoning, when they find some chariot, it doesn't matter if they find a chariot, they date that chariot, which is all good. Their finding is good, dating is good, but then they start shouting Mahabharat war.
correct.
That is the
Immediately,
problem.
immediately.
Immediately, whatever the time it is, they think that's when the Mahabharata war happened. What kind of stupidity is that? I mean, there is no other name for it, you know?
We have seen people starting from 1,100 years back
Yeah,
onwards, so they completely ignored Chola, completely ignored Chalukya, all the great leaders, completely ignored Adi Sankaracharya, all these people. Anyway, great presentation. I learned a
thank you.
lot myself, and I was trying to unmute myself. That's why I was delayed, but finally I did it. So, anyway, thank you all for
Sorry for
watching.
going over time.
Yeah, thank you all for watching, and do comment on the video when you watch it on YouTube, and let us know your feedback. And I'm very thankful to you for all the feedback that you have given, and I think we'll cover that in subsequent sessions. Thank you.
Thank you.